What's up, everybody? This is Everybody Settle Down, the sports edition. I'm Charlie Marlow. That is the great Eric Messersmith. I'm in the greater St. Louis, Missouri area. He's out there in, I was going to say beautiful Los Angeles. It's always beautiful, but how you doing out there, Eric? Has everything calmed down a bit, right?
It has, luckily. I mean, the devastation is still insane, but the active fires are pretty much contained. And for now, knock on wood, everything seems to be getting back to normal for the most part. But of course, for so many people, hundreds and hundreds of families, their lives will never be the same. And the destruction is just crazy and immense. And it's going to take years, if not decades, to recover. And some people will never recover. Yeah, their homes are just gone, and they won't get enough money from their insurance company to cover the costs of rebuilding, and they will have to leave. And so those are the people I feel for the most, that will have to resettle somewhere else, and all their possessions and destroyed, no home to go back to. It's really a sad situation.
So it's hard to transition from that, but this show is going to be sports related, which, look, whether you're going through just something awful like that or your everyday, sports is supposed to be a little bit of an escape from your everyday daily life. Have had some great football, NFL playoffs, obviously the college football playoff national championship game on Monday. We'll get to that, but I know you're more of an NFL guy, Eric. So let's start there. I said last week that I watched a bit of the Eagles-Packers. This past week, I was actually out to dinner on Saturday night, and we were going to go get a table. There was no table, so we're waiting. We sit at the bar. We were going to sit at the bar just for a bit, get a couple drinks, then go to the table. But then that Lions-Commanders game was on, and I don't think my wife was happy that we remained at the bar because I was kind of watching the game as we're sitting there and conversing. But I'll tell you what, I don't know if you watched that game, but that was about the most entertaining half of football, the first half, that I can remember. Huge plays. We're talking 50, 60-yard touchdowns. I don't know how many points were scored in the second quarter alone, but that was a really fun game. And then, of course, though, the Lions, it's just like you feel for Lions fans. I do. I grew up an hour from Detroit. You thought maybe this was their year, and they don't even get to the frickin' NFC Championship game.
Yeah, it was 52 points in the first half, which I believe was a record for any half in an NFL playoff game ever, and 42 in the second quarter. That was incredible.
Jeez.
The game, unfortunately, in the end, didn't turn out to be that close, but it was amazing. That part of it, it was so exciting, and I just think it was such a contrast too to the Sunday games, which were good, which were fine. You know, the Bills, Ravens, Eagles, Rams. There were some competitive moments in those. But especially the Baltimore-Buffalo game, but outdoors in the elements, which really affected those games. And you could see it with the drop passes and some of the turnovers that Baltimore had, the people slipping. And then you had the game in Detroit with the perfect conditions on Saturday night inside, and you saw the difference.
So if you're talking about the Ravens game, so I watched a good amount of that as well. And I saw the stat for both Josh Allen and also for who's the quarterback for Jalen Hurts for the Eagles, about
Lamar
the
Jackson.
fact that
Jalen Hurts.
Well, for Eagles, Jalen Hurts, you didn't really have to do much. They didn't really have to do much in those games except for not make mistakes. And if they didn't make mistakes in some of these games, their teams ended up winning. And I know there's a lot of focus on Mark Andrews. We can talk about that. But there was the one fumble from Lamar Jackson. And to me, that was really the game. If you look at, Von Miller scoops it up. He doesn't score, but they score a touchdown very quickly after that. So you look at a game where you're a 2-point conversion away from tying the game and potentially sending it to overtime. But that play there where you have the fumble, that was a 10 to 14 point swing because the Ravens easily could have scored. They could have kicked a field goal. They could have scored a touchdown. All of a sudden, boom, it's 7 points the opposite direction. And I know there's a lot of focus on the Mark Andrews drop, and that was right in his breadbasket. But also in a game like that, that's the play that I really focused on. Not the Andrews. That was the one at the end. But if Lamar Jackson doesn't fumble that football, there's a very good chance the Ravens win.
Yeah, I think you could argue the Ravens were the better team, and the Ravens are the second half of the year were playing probably better than anyone else in the NFL. Once they got their defense fixed, their defense was number one in the league coming down the stretch in points allowed, yards allowed. And then you had Derrick Henry having one of the great rushing seasons we've seen in NFL history, certainly for somebody his age, but just in general. And then you have a guy putting up maybe the best quarterback season that we've ever seen. First guy, I mean, Lamar Jackson, what he did this year, it was really unbelievable. Over 4,000 passing yards, over 900 rushing yards. No one's ever done that. Over 40 touchdowns and fewer than 5 interceptions. No one's ever done that. It was statistically maybe the greatest quarterback season ever. He's about to win his 3rd MVP, but yet in the playoffs, he has not been nearly as good. Now, this game against Buffalo, he wasn't terrible by any means, but he had the big mistakes, as you pointed out, and some of that is due to luck, is due to the elements, but this is now a pattern with Jackson. He has been historically great in the regular season. I mean, 3 MVPs, there's only a few guys ever that have won more than 3 MVPs. And what he has done, first team All-Pro again, he's going to go down as one of the greatest regular season performers ever. But legacies are built in the playoffs, and it shows you how tough it is to win in the playoffs. It's so distorted in the NFL because you get one game to advance. It's not like the other major pro sports where it's best 4 out of 7 and there are multiple rounds, and it's easier to redeem yourself if you do something poorly. In the NFL, you could get one game and then that might be it. And then you come back next year and you get one more game, and if you play poorly, that might be it. And I think NFL fan bases are so distorted and legacies are so distorted by the few teams and coaches and players that succeed so much in the postseason. And I'm thinking particularly right now of the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Mahomes and what they're doing, potentially going to a 3rd straight Super Bowl and winning a championship, three-peating, which no one has ever done, getting a 4th title already for them, for that group, which would be incredible. I think this is Mahomes' 7th year as a starting quarterback. And then before that, obviously, what Brady and Belichick did together in New England. Those 2 runs make everything pale in comparison. And so then you look at a quarterback like Jackson, who I think now is 3-5 in the playoffs, and it looks terrible when really, if you watch that game, you saw it, Baltimore could have easily won that game. If a few things go differently, they're now in the AFC Championship, where they would probably be favored against the Chiefs, or at least it would be a toss-up. You look at Buffalo, too, with Josh Allen. Now, they got the win here. Allen's had more success than Lamar Jackson has, but he hasn't broken through, and a large part of that is because they get beat by the Chiefs. It's happened to them several times during this run where they've been good, and we'll see. Maybe it happens again Sunday in a year where it looks like Buffalo's probably better, or at least equal to Kansas City on a neutral field. I think Kansas City's a 2-point favorite. They always say you get 3, roughly for being at home. So that would lead you to believe that if this game were on a neutral field, it would be even, or Buffalo might be a slight favorite. But I think the historic greatness of the Kansas City Chiefs under Reid and with Mahomes at QB, it just boxes everybody else out and diminishes everybody else. And so other fan bases, I think, have a distorted sense of what success looks like, because they think it should be like the Chiefs or like the Patriots before them, and that is just not realistic.
Yeah, I like Pat Mahomes. I like the Chiefs, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce. So I was rooting for them in previous years, but now it's getting to the point where I'm kind of tired of them. And it has nothing to do with, some people don't like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and all that. It's nothing about any of the players. It's not about Jackson Mahomes. I just feel like after a while, I like to see new teams win. Like, I would like to see Josh Allen break through. I wanted to see Lamar Jackson break through, just because I feel like we've seen a ton of Pat Mahomes, and he's unbelievable. I will say this, and that team's unbelievable, and they have been. I watched a decent amount of that game, and I know the storyline afterwards, it's still being talked about, was the fact that the Chiefs were getting every single call there. And I'll tell you what, from what I was watching, I have to agree. It did seem like the Chiefs were getting just about every 50-50 call in that game. And I think that may work against them coming up this week. A lot of people are saying, oh, the Chiefs and the NFL, they're in bed with each other. But to me, that was such a storyline, especially on social media, but also with all the talk shows and all that. These refs are human beings. And the last thing you want is to have another game like this where it seems like Pat Mahomes is getting the benefit of the doubt on every single call. From what I saw, and I didn't watch the entire game, but I agree with the narrative there. It sure does seem like you can't touch Pat Mahomes.
It was hard to watch some of those plays and not think that they were biased towards the Chiefs. Now, that doesn't mean that the refs intentionally, by the way, or had a plan or like it was a league conspiracy, right? If you watch the NFL, you know that quarterbacks near the sideline or quarterbacks in the pocket or quarterbacks running, basically anytime the quarterback has the ball and a defensive player is near him and there's what looks like rough contact, a lot of times the flag is going to come out, whether it was legitimate or not. And I think that's what happened with Mahomes. And Mahomes is smart. He baits the refs. He's like, it's like flopping what he does. He waits until the absolute last second to slide. If he's along the sideline, he sort of hangs out right at the edge, waiting for someone to push him or hit him. And in real time, it is really hard for officials to tell if a play that looks bad actually is bad. And we saw in replay that the flags that the Texans got on the roughing the passer, on the unnecessary roughness where Mahomes ran, when you watch them in slow motion, you can see they should not have been thrown. But again, that doesn't mean that the league is telling the officials, hey, we got to protect the Chiefs and Mahomes. What the league is telling the officials is we need to protect quarterbacks. And when there's questionable calls, oftentimes they go in favor of the quarterback. That's kind of a league-wide thing. But, of course, everyone's watching these games in huge numbers, and they have the most, the stakes are obviously the biggest in the playoffs, and there's the narrative out there that the league favors the Chiefs, wants the Chiefs. Taylor Swift is there, right? The league wants her for network broadcast so they can pan to her after every time Kelsey makes a catch. So the conspiracy theories are there. I don't think it's a conspiracy by the league or the officials. I do think in that game in particular, the Chiefs got some great calls. That said, I've watched football for a long time. I hate when people blame the officials. If you play well enough, you can overcome that stuff almost always. And that's just the reality of that's what, losing teams point to the officials and complain and bitch. And that doesn't mean they're wrong, that the officials hurt them, that it wasn't exactly down the middle. But you know what? The Texans had their chances in that game. The Chiefs are not some juggernaut anymore, and they didn't execute enough to win. So I don't have a ton of sympathy for that. I think that is the way of the league, where quarterbacks are going to get the benefit of the doubt on those very, very questionable calls. And that's just kind of how it is. And Mahomes is really good at drawing that, kind of like a great NBA flopper or a soccer flopper, someone who's really good at making things that aren't necessarily penalties look like penalties. That's a skill, and Mahomes is very skilled at it.
What do you think about the snow games? I know that's been talked about a lot as well. I like a snow game here and there, but to have a bunch of them in the playoffs, I do wonder if that's what you want as a league, with everything on the line, to have weather play such a determining factor. And then again, it gets back to the game I was talking about earlier. You're not going to have the Commanders versus the Lions, 42 points of exciting. And look, people want points. They just do. Every once in a while, to watch a 13-10 game is fun. To see one snow game here or there is fun. But I don't know if you want half your games to be snow games, right? People are going to watch when you're scoring 42 points in the second quarter. That's what made that so entertaining. And the fact that you can't play defense like you could in the past anyway. The NFL, they are opening up the rule book so everything does favor offenses. That's what people want to see. I just wonder if you want to have so many of these games be in the snow in the playoffs when everybody's watching, when everything is on the line. I don't think you want weather to be that big of a factor. And it does seem like about half the games have been impacted by snow here for the NFL.
Yeah, it just so happened the games this year, a lot of them in cold weather cities, with the Arctic blast we saw, all over the Northeast, it helped produce snow even down in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, the Gulf of America that we saw recently. So I think I agree with you. Sorry, I caught myself there. Saturday night, that game was way more exciting than the two Sunday, and the elements had a lot to do with that. There's no question about it. I don't mind the elements every once in a while, like you said. I think it looks cool. There's a certain legacy there and nostalgia for like the Ice Bowl and the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field and seeing the guy's breath. But I think for just aesthetically, for what I think the modern NFL fan likes, I think we like the big plays. And the weather, when it affects the quality of the play, you saw that Sunday. Guys were slipping. Guys dropped balls that they probably wouldn't have dropped if it were, 15 degrees warmer. There weren't the moisture on the ball where people were losing control. So I think I tend to agree with you, but I don't really know if there's a good solution for that, because you're not all of a sudden going to move these games to neutral field, and you're not going to build dome stadiums in these cities. But I want to say one more thing about what you said about the Chiefs, because as much as I don't like people complaining about the refs, I think it is becoming a problem for the NFL when people feel like there is a bias. And so it's going to be really interesting this week with everybody watching to see which way the flags go, because I'm sure you were on X, as I was, either during or right after that Chiefs games, and some of the memes, some of them were angry, some of them were just hilarious, like the AI where Mahomes is kissing the official. Did you see that one right before the game? The AI image. The narrative now is set in place, and so everybody's going to be looking. It's like confirmation bias, right? If you are looking for something, you will probably find it, and everybody's going to be looking in that game who's not a Chiefs fan for any kind of bias that goes against the Bills.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was literally about to say that, and that's really what I was alluding to. I think by now I consume more of my news and sports from X than I do actually watching the games. So again, I didn't watch that entire game, but when I saw it, I was like, again, I'm not saying that the Chiefs won because of that, but it did seem like they were getting the benefit of the doubt. And then when you do go to X and you have AI or Grok, and it's not just pictures, it's also video now. You got video of Patrick Mahomes making out with the refs. I think somebody photoshopped a picture where Andy Reid was on his knees around the refs. You're seeing a lot of stuff like that. And again, that's kind of where I get my news. So I find it funny. And again, the Chiefs they're unbelievable regardless. But it is becoming a story which the NFL doesn't want. I agree with you there. How about Mark Andrews, though? And I wanted to look up his numbers. I mean, Mark Andrews is a really good player, really good tight end. He's got, 436 career catches, 5,500 yards, 51 touchdowns. And look, everybody wants to be a professional athlete. Hell, I did when I was a kid. And you want all the glory and the touchdowns and the money and a Super Bowl and all that. But man, no matter what Mark Andrews ever does, and he's had a hell of a career, that's going to be the one thing that everybody remembers. That's Jackie Smith right there. That pass, I mean, what do you think it was? Was it less than the ball traveling from Lamar Jackson's hands to Mark Andrews? Was it 8 yards? Whatever it was. I mean, just a little flick right in his breadbasket, and he drops that. And again, I know he makes a lot of money, but man, I feel bad for guys like that. Like, he'll never be able to live that down. Now, if they win a Super Bowl next year, okay, people may be quiet, but like, that's one that sticks with you.
Yeah, and look, there's no guarantee you're going to get back there. Lamar could get hurt. Every season's a new season. I thought Brady made that point when he was broadcasting the game over the weekend. It's like, look at Dan Marino. He made the Super Bowl in his first year as a rookie. I don't think he ever got back, one of the all-time great quarterbacks in the NFL. And now his legacy is tarnished in large part because of that, because nobody, like, you look at Marino's numbers, what he did, he was putting up numbers like quarterbacks from today in an era when nobody else was doing that. Now, people have passed him by since then because the roles are completely different. The game is completely different. But if Marino, with his ability, played today, he would have numbers that would be in the top 5 all time, probably in yards and touchdowns. And he did until these modern passers came around and passed him. But his legacy's forever tarnished. It's one of the reasons I don't like the legacy and the narrative of putting everything or putting so much on playoff success in general, but championships in particular, because I think it distorts so many guys' careers in all of the sports. And I think it's especially not fair in football because, as I said, it so often comes down to just one game, one time. And Mark Andrews is a great player. I mean, I haven't looked at his numbers, but he strikes me as like if he keeps doing this for a few more years, like a borderline Hall of Fame tight end. I mean, a really good player. And now if they don't get back there or they don't have success when they do, he's going to be remembered partially for that. And I said the same thing about Lamar Jackson, who has not played well in the playoffs. But that's why I said earlier, don't let the success of the Chiefs dynasty distort what typically happens with players and coaches in the postseason is that they lose a lot. I was talking about this with Mike Tomlin because I'm a Steeler fan, and so many Steeler fans want to get rid of Tomlin, which to me, I understand that that he's not a perfect coach, and I have my issues with him. But the Steelers leadership wisely chose to keep him around because he gets you in the mix every year. And yes, I've lost their last, I think, 6 playoff games, haven't won a playoff game since 2016, which is a hell of a bad run. But if you look at the numbers and coaches all time, and you sort of just look at the top, say 20 coaches for career wins, and you look at their playoff records, almost all of them are right around 500. A few games below, a few games above. The exceptions, obviously, we know, Reed, Belichick, but those are not the rule. Those are the exceptions. Why? Because it's really hard to win playoff games in the NFL, and oftentimes it comes down to the weather, luck, who has the ball last, those kinds of things, and that now all of a sudden defines your legacy forever. And I just don't think that's fair, and I think it distorts how we look at players and at teams.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair, but I also get it, especially for quarterbacks. And everybody knows it's the old saying that head coaches and quarterbacks, you get too much credit when things are going well. You get too much blame when things aren't going well. But I do think if you have a long tenure in the league, and if you're playing 15 years, pushing 20 years, and you've been to the playoffs a bunch of times, and you're starting to have a bunch of different games, I do think it's fair. For example, the narrative around Lamar Jackson, to me, is fair. Like, he has to do it. I'm not saying he stinks. I mean, he's obviously great. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's an MVP. But I do think if we're still talking about this 5 years from now, and we're talking about a decade's worth of playoff failure, I mean, you do have to get to a Super Bowl or try to win a Super Bowl or win one. Look at Aaron Rodgers. I say this about Aaron Rodgers. As great as Aaron Rodgers is, and I think Aaron Rodgers might be the best thrower of the football that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And Aaron Rodgers has that one Super Bowl. But I think it's also fair to say that, again, maybe he's getting too much blame as the quarterback, but I think he's kind of underperformed in the playoffs. And I'm looking at that as, how long has he been in the league? 15, whatever it's been, 17 years, one Super Bowl, but he's also had a lot of great teams, a lot of great defenses with the Packers. So I think that's fair too, especially if you've been in the league for a long, long time. Of course, nobody's going to be like Brady. Mahomes is close, but that is not the norm, as you said. But if you've been in for 15 years, like Joe Burrow could be a Dan Marino situation, right? Joe Burrow gets the Super Bowl early. He may never get there again. And he's a great player.
Right. Well, and with Lamar, the reason that there is fairness to that argument right now is because he has underperformed individually in the postseason so much compared to what his regular season numbers are. That's why there is some fairness to it with Lamar Jackson now. But I would just make 2 points. First of all, if you look at his overall line against Buffalo, remember, in the elements, 18 of 25, 254, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had the fumble, of course, a quarterback rating of 114.4. And if Andrews doesn't drop that pass, there's a decent chance they're going to overtime, and then who knows what happens. So he did not play that badly at all when you consider what was going on. But also, I think if Lamar Jackson gets back there enough and has the opportunities, he will do okay. He'll do fine. He'll probably have a run where his team gets to the Super Bowl. He'll lose some more playoff games. My point is, he'll be typical of what you expect, which is guys in the postseason to lose a bunch of games and win some games and occasionally make a run. That's the norm. That's what happens for most guys. You pointed out Aaron Rodgers is a great example of that. I think about Ben Roethlisberger, again, Steeler fan here, won 2 Super Bowls, but he lost one. And in one of the ones they won. It wasn't because of him. It was in spite of him. If you remember a long time ago against the Seahawks, he played terrible in that game. They won the Super Bowl anyway. So that's the thing with judging quarterbacks based on team success is sometimes the team plays bad and you play great and you lose. And sometimes the team plays really well and you don't play that well and you win and you get all the credit. And we do this in sports. It's not just the NFL. One of the things about the NBA that bothers me with the LeBron Jordan debate is how people point to Jordan's 6-0 in the finals and act like that's the end of the argument. Whereas LeBron, I think, is 4-6, I think, in the finals. He's been to the finals 10 times off the top of my head. So that means Jordan's automatically better. Well, Jordan, what about all the years he didn't get there? All the years the Pistons beat them. The year he came back, people forget that year after his first retirement, and they lost in the playoffs. They didn't even make it to the conference finals that year. That is like erased because all that matters is you won the championship, but it's also getting there and getting into the postseason and having the roll of the dice. Like even as great as Brady was, they lost how many times in the playoffs? They lost twice in the Super Bowl, right?
2 to the Giants
in the Super Bowl.
And they lost to the Eagles.
2 to the Giants, and they lost to the Eagles. So those 3 times he was beaten in the Super Bowl. Does that make Brady less of a quarterback? Of course not. It actually makes him more of a quarterback, more of a great all-time great, losing those games because he got them there. Like I would much rather get to 10, 12 title games and lose half of them than get to 5 and win them all, because there's something about getting there. And when you have exposure, everybody fails. That's the thing. When you are there enough and enough time goes by, everyone is going to fail. Everyone is going to have bad moments. And because we look at those few guys who under the right circumstances didn't, or we forget about the times they lost and didn't get there, we then think that's the standard, right? Everyone's just got to be amazing and always step up in the big moments. And that's just not how it works. It didn't work that way for Brady. It didn't even work that way for like Jordan, even though we think it did, because nobody remembers the years the Pistons beat his brains out early in his career. He gets like a pass for those. Like, what if they would have gone to the finals and lost those years? It's almost like for legacy, it's better for Jordan that they lost earlier. Right. Think about how crazy that is. It's worse for LeBron's legacy that he drug a fairly mediocre Cavaliers team to the finals when he was 22 years old and got stomped by the Spurs. That tarnishes his legacy. It would have been better for LeBron if they would have won 40 games and not made the playoffs, in some people's minds, not in my mind. In my mind, it's amazing that he got that Cavaliers team to the final. It's amazing that he got some of those other later in his career Cavaliers teams to the finals against really good Warriors teams and got beat by Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Like, that doesn't tarnish his legacy. It enhances it, at least, how I look at it. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but it's kind of the broader way that I think as sports fans, we're so obsessed with, did you win the championship? As if that's the only thing that matters, and the standard, it distorts everything else. That's what happened, like I said, with Mike Tomlin. People take it for granted. It's not easy to get to the playoffs almost every year, to fight to be in playoff contention every year. Ask Lions fans up until the last few years. Ask Jets fans. Ask the Commanders fans how hard it is to get to a championship game. They're there for the first time since 1991. I think some of these fan bases get spoiled. It's not easy. It doesn't happen automatically.
It's funny. I've had that same argument on the radio many times over the years, and I've said basically the exact same thing. It is the dumbest thing ever to punish LeBron or punish Brady, because it's like, think of it like the Olympics. You're essentially saying that it's better to get a bronze medal or no medal at all than to get a silver medal. It's the dumbest thing. Obviously, everybody wants gold. Right. Everybody wants a championship. But look at it like from a college football standpoint. Ohio State has finished second in the country a lot since I've been an adult. The Florida game, LSU going back, they lost to Alabama a couple years ago. And so then Ohio State gets shit on, especially if they really get their ass kicked in that game, which they have a couple of those times. But also, you finish second in the country. And it's the same with LeBron. LeBron finished second in the NBA. That is way better than losing in the Eastern Conference Finals or earlier to the Pistons. Makes absolutely no sense. I've been saying that for years about LeBron, and people compare Joe Montana to Tom Brady. Anytime you get deeper in the playoffs, it's better. Anytime you win another series, it's better. That's insane. Let's do college football now. The old Buckeyes finally break through, win a national championship. First one since the 2014 season, and I am an Ohio State fan. I will say this, though. Ohio State has had incredible teams almost every year that I can remember. I'm talking about, you can go back to John Cooper. We're talking about 30 to 35 years worth of teams where they're basically 11-1 or 10-2 going into the whatever bowl season or Big Ten championship almost every year. And so they break through, they win a national championship. And I'm not trying to be greedy here. Ohio State probably should win a national championship with the resources they have once every decade or so. When you think back, and I'm thinking back about all the great teams they've had under, first of all, don't even go back to John Cooper, where they lost to Michigan every year. But Jim Tressel, amazing teams. Urban Meyer, unbelievable teams. Ryan Day, I mean, NFL guys all over these rosters. But also this Ohio State dynasty, which has gone on really, like I said, 20, 30 years. They've also ran up into a generational run by the SEC for a good 17-year period, and also just an unbelievable run by Nick Saban in Alabama. And when you started this conversation talking about Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and what those guys did, Belichick, Patriots, and Mahomes, Reed, Chiefs, that's not normal. What Nick Saban did under Alabama, with Alabama, may never be done again. Like, there's a lot of teams that don't have national championships, or they only have one. I mean, whoever you want to talk about, Oklahoma, Ohio State, LSU, Georgia. For about 15 years, Alabama was amazing, and they blocked a lot of other really great teams and programs from winning national championships.
Yeah, just think about it this way. What active coach has the most national championships now? Is there any active coach that has more than one?
So Dabo has 2 with Clemson.
Dabo have 2, yeah.
And Kirby Smart has 2 with Georgia.
Because Saban, and to some extent Dabo as well, blocked so many people. Now, I'm just going to slightly contradict what I said earlier, because I think college sports is so different than pro sports. In college sports, I think in pro sports, the default expectation is it's pretty good if you get into the mix a lot. Like, that's typically what happens. You get into the mix, and then once you're in the playoffs, you'll win some, you'll lose some. And if over enough time, if you get enough chances, you'll probably be somewhere around even, because the playoffs are really hard. In college football, it's different because there's no salary cap. The institutional advantages of, like you said, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Michigan, a few other schools are so vast that you shouldn't be judged on the standard of it's pretty good if you get in the mix. You should be judged on the standard of you have such a massive advantage. Now, to some degree, NIL both enhances that advantage, but also could minimize it at places like Colorado, right? Where now, if you get the right coach and you have the right cachet and the right brand and the right boosters that have a collective, now maybe you can erase that advantage that the good old boys have had. So that is possible. But the way that it's existed for the most part up until the last year or two is that those schools have had such an advantage that they should be judged on a different standard. And that standard is competing for titles often, right? And Ohio State is definitely one of those schools. And that's why Ryan Day was on the hot seat, even though, did you see that graphic they had during the national championship game where they had the highest winning percentages in college football history from a coach with more than 50 games? And it was like Newt Rockne, Walter Camp, who helped invent modern football, and Ryan Day. There were 4 dudes Ryan Day, and then the other three dudes had black and white photos. That's how long ago they coached. Is they didn't have colored photos of these guys. So that shows you Ryan Day how historically amazing he has been at Ohio State. That not only is he better than any current coach in terms of winning percentage, in order to find comps, you have to go back to guys who coached when they didn't even have color photos available.
It's funny because I did a quick little radio hit this morning with the morning after talking about Ohio State because I couldn't do it yesterday. And they were giving me some shit too because I did say after the Michigan game, yeah, so Ryan Day is 70-10 overall, 70-10. And I was, look, did I go a little overboard? Sure. But also, Ryan Day had not won a big game in 4 years. And I hate the fact that I have to keep bringing this up because I'm happy Ryan Day won. It was not personal. But when people like Kirk Herbstreit talk about the lunatic fringe and all that, I'm thinking, well, he has to win a big game, right? Like 70-10 is great. But if you're losing to Michigan every year and you don't win any Big Ten championships and you don't win a national championship, again, the standard at Ohio State is different when you have $20 million rosters and you have NFL players up and down your roster. And so, again, I'm happy Ryan Day won, but I think the criticism was 100% valid. And now he's a legend, but you have to do it. I mean, you look at the great coaches at Ohio State. I looked this up. Paul Brown, Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day is in that list. But John Cooper isn't. And John Cooper was a great coach. And hell, they were 11-0 or freaking 10-1 every year they played Michigan. But he lost to Michigan. I think his record was like 2-9-1 or whatever it is. So my thing is, like, I'm very happy Ohio State won. But it also, everybody's like, oh, you guys were all calling for Ryan Day. First of all, nobody reasonable that I know wanted him fired midseason. But they just said, hey, coach, either beat Michigan 50% of the time or win just a national championship, which may seem like a lot, but in 6 years, you've had a top 5 team every single year. I don't even think that's that crazy of expectations. So again, I'm very happy they won, and I hope he stays forever. And guess what? They can probably lose to Michigan for the next 5 years now, but he's built up that equity. But the point is you have to do it. You have to win the games. Like this is the big leagues, man. That's what Tim McCarver used to always say. This is Ohio State. This is what you signed up for. And that's why I'm glad Urban Meyer kind of pushed back when people were criticizing the fans. He's like, he said something that was a great clip. It was going around on social media. And he goes, yeah, well, a player would tell me, oh man, like I fumbled the ball and everybody on social media is ripping me. And he'd be like, well, don't fumble the ball. Right? I mean, Ohio State, like this is Ohio State. This is what you're supposed to do. Yeah. You're set up to succeed.
Yeah.
They're giving you every resource. They're literally giving you money now. You have facilities. You have the transfer portal. You have the most talented roster. The fans just want you to win some games, to beat Michigan when you're a 3-touchdown favorite, right? That's not too much to ask, I didn't think.
I think with all of these things we're discussing, it's all about the context and that is what you lose so much when you just boil it down to record or isolate an individual performance here or there. And the context matters. And so in this case, the context of Ryan Day is they had an incredible amount of talent and everyone saw it. And Michigan was really down from what they had been. And you lose that game after losing to an Oregon team that a nice team, but a team you're at least as good in, if not better. And I think they proved in the playoff they were better when they beat them the second time around. And so that I think is fair to criticize him for that, even though at the same time everyone acknowledges the record overall is amazing because it is not anywhere close to a level playing field like the NFL or like major pro sports. And particularly this year. And that's why the context is so important. Like a guy can play great and lose, and then people will tarnish his legacy. And it's like, well, no, he actually did his part, and it wasn't his fault. With Day, it was like, well, you have such an advantage over Michigan. If you lose that game, it is kind of on you. And it is fair to criticize you because the game plan wasn't very good, and you have the superior athletes, and you've got to get it done. And he did, and credit to him. But I agree with you. It was not, despite the record, because of the context, it was not crazy to call him out and say, is this the right guy? Because it always comes down to, is the person, the player, the coach maximizing what they have and doing the best they can to put themselves in position. And in that Michigan game, I don't think there's any way you could say Ryan Day is maximizing what he has. Credit to him and the team for turning it around. They had apparently, they were talking about this during the broadcast, a kind of a come to Jesus meeting where they all got together and kind of hashed everything out. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. But it was totally fair, I think, for Ohio State fans to hold his feet to the fire, given the incredible advantages that he has, particularly this year. Like the talent may not always be that great, the talent disparity. Certainly it won't be, I don't think, with Michigan most years. But it was this year. In 2024, it was.
Yeah, I think this is another interesting part about the college football playoff. When you think about the college football playoff going from 4 teams to 12, in my head, I said, oh, that's going to help out kind of the Ole Misses of the world, the Missouris of the world. I think you're going to see make these playoffs. It's kind of the second tier of these conferences that usually didn't get to make the top 4. You're going to see a lot of these teams make the 12-team playoff. And I think that's great. But here's what's crazy. You could make the argument that the 12-team playoff is going to help maybe Ohio State specifically, but teams like Ohio State even more. And this is off the top of my head, but in the 10 years of the college football playoff 4-team, Ohio State won it all the first year. I think they got there about half the time. I can look this up. I bet you they got to the Final Four 5 or 6 times. I think they were 5th. They were either 5th or 6th every other year. So literally every year they didn't make the playoff, they were the first team out, maybe the second team out. And they might have been the first team out literally every year they didn't make it. It was that close because that's how good they were. They were always 11-1. They lost to Michigan State the year after they won the national championship in a crazy game, never got to defend their title. They were 10-2 some of those years. But that's what's crazy also is the 12-team playoff allows the great programs that have a misstep or two to get in. And then it's not about eye test. It's about winning football games. That's another thing that we should bring up. In any other year, the Michigan loss is one of the most devastating losses in the history of the program because it basically ends your season. You could have won a national championship. Yeah. You should have won the Big Ten. You beat Michigan. It's great. Last year, the season would have been over. You'd have been in a shit bowl game that nobody cared about. You'd have had opt-outs. Your players would already be in the transfer portal. So again, I love Ryan Day. I'm happy he won. I hope he stays forever. He also got bailed out by the 12-team playoff. He had a second life. A lot of teams will now have a second life because of the expanded playoff.
Well, and let's be honest, those schools should make the playoff pretty much every year, at least be in contention. Yeah. And having those big brands is great for college football in the postseason. And this year, the proof was obvious because Ohio State and Notre Dame, the 2 teams that made it to the final, would not have made a 4-team playoff. They would have been the 5th and 6th teams. They would have missed out, and they were the 2 best, it turned out. Also, Arizona State would have been nowhere near a 4-team playoff. And they got in, they won their conference, and they showed they're pretty damn good with that game against Texas when they very easily could have won. Wanted to go to like 3 or 4 overtimes. So I think having the automatic bids for conference champions is great, as long as they're not seeded 3 and 4, which I don't think they will be anymore. I think they'll change that for next year, or certainly by the year after. So once they make that tweak, I think the 12-team playoff is going to be really, really good for college football going forward because it gives every team who's deserving a chance, and it gives those conference champions a chance too, because you just assume the Big 12 and the ACC aren't as good, and in most years they're probably not. But that game showed you that not necessarily, and we can't just automatically assume now that because the Big 10 and the SEC have become these juggernaut conferences that they are automatically always going to be superior to everybody else. I hope college football will fight because what's happening now is the SEC and the Big 10 have so much more money than everybody else and so much more power. They're going to start to make demands. And you've already seen this with rumors that they're trying to get a number of automatic bids for their league into the playoff, which I think would be a mistake. I think you need to have it as it is now with the selection committee picking the teams the at-large teams and the conference champions going in automatically. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that going forward, because that's going to be a big fight for the future of college football, along with how you regulate NIL. And because the Big Ten and the SEC, the gap now between them and everyone else is so big and growing that they're going to start demanding more and more power, and they may just try to break away and do their own thing. And that's really the danger with college football, is you get to a point where the disparity is so big that you essentially either have to do whatever the Big Ten and the SEC want to advantage them, or they just leave and do their own thing.
So this show, which was very political in 2024, we're trying to be a little more lighthearted and more sportsy here in 2025. But you did have the inauguration, and Eric, you're a big political guy. For people who don't know, he contributes on Fox News. And I'll be honest, I did not watch live 1 second of the inauguration because it was a holiday. We're doing stuff with the kids. We went to a slide park and all that. And just like football, I consume a lot of this through X, through the memes and all that. So we talked about the memes of Patrick Mahomes making out with the refs in football. So what I saw, obviously, Mark Zuckerberg is sneaking a look at Jeff Bezos's wife's rack. From what I saw, George W. Bush did seem like he was on something. What did I miss though? Those were the two that I really. I know the things I saw about Barron Trump being tall. I saw all the ones that were distorted. So was there an image where it was a real one that looked just ridiculous?
Oh, well, just him. I mean, the image that's distorted where he's walking behind his parents, he does look way taller than them in real life. But yeah, not quite as tall as the AI generated one. I thought the Hillary Clinton laughing when Trump was said he was going to rename the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America was just kind of a funny moment. And just Bush with his constant, like he looked like I don't think he did. He's kind of a goofy guy. That's kind of his reputation, but he looked like the guy who took the gummy and then went to the serious event. And you're like, oh my God. Do people know that I'm high? And he was just hilarious. His facial expressions and the way that he was kind of laughing through, pretty funny.
Yeah, the Gulf of America thing, I think that's kind of funny. There are some people that if you like Trump or don't like Trump, especially if you don't like Trump, I think that was one of the problems was they kind of go after everything, right? Even if you don't like Trump, he says a lot of things that make sense. And it's the same with the other side of the aisle. But like to get mad about Gulf of America, I think it's kind of funny. Like I'm okay with it. I mean, it's unnecessary. It doesn't do anything. It's kind of dumb, but it's also Trump, whether you like Trump or not, he is a branding and promotional and marketing genius. And doing stuff like that, because it's obviously America first and all that, so now it's the Gulf of America, it works. Like, if you have a problem with that, then you probably do, in my opinion, have a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome. Again, it's totally unnecessary, but also it doesn't really matter. You're just changing. I guess they have to make new maps now or new globes.
Right. Well, it's the boy who cried wolf thing, like the outrage. Yes. We used to talk about this a lot last year, leading up to the election. If you're outraged by everything, then if everything's outrageous, then nothing is, and that's part of the problem. And part of that is just social media. It feeds the beast of the tribalism, so of our politics. So you have to gin up your outrage for every single thing. And I think people look at that and are like, okay, come on. And then you lose credibility when there are other things that really are outrageous that come along because you were the person complaining about the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, which is kind of silly, or like Elon Musk making some weird, awkward gesture. And now all of a sudden you're saying he did the Nazi salute.
Okay. So John Reibolt says, hi, Charlie. And also, can we talk about the Lauren Sanchez outfit? So that's Bezos's wife. I did see Megyn Kelly criticize her for that. And again, I wasn't trying to look too much, but did she almost have like a lingerie type? Well, okay. When I don't
believe you were trying to look too much.
Well, what I'm saying is I see these clips. I'm seeing the vertical shorts on X and all that. And I saw Megyn Kelly ripping on her for her outfit. And it did look like she maybe had, she had some type of some type of jacket over it. But I don't know if it was like, was it just a bra underneath it, basically? Was that what it was?
It looked that way. Yeah, it definitely did look that way. Or at least some type of negligee. I mean,
Sure.
it definitely looked like evening wear underneath for sure. And then Fetterman showed up in shorts and a t-shirt, or shorts and a sweatshirt. So I was glad to see that he kept it real. What I'm kind of with Fetterman on this. I know I'm in the minority, and I know there's this thing you have to dress a certain way for different occasions. I do think it is weird in our society how we obsess about and get angry about how people dress for certain things. And yet we don't muster up that same outrage for things that really matter and can affect our lives. It is kind of a weird thing to me. It's hard for me to get really upset, or upset at all for that matter, about anybody wearing any articles of clothing to literally anything. I think as long as you are covered and you're not naked, I'm cool. And I wouldn't even mind if people were naked necessarily, but I get it for our society. People can't run around naked. I understand why we have laws against indecent exposure. I'm not saying that we should all be nudists. What I'm saying is maybe we should care a little bit less about what people wear and how they present themselves in their appearance and certain things, and care a little bit more about what they say and what they do and how that can affect our country. Let's save, again, we're talking about outrage. Let's save the outrage for that.
Okay. I generally agree with you, but this goes back to, so when I was a sportscaster, I'm on the local news. It always pissed me off that I had to wear a tie. Why do I have to wear a tie when I'm talking about sports? So I kind of agree with you. And by the way, I like Fetterman, and Fetterman's about the most normal Democrat you have these days. And you see a lot of Republicans now that are on the side of Fetterman. They're like, oh, what happened? What changed? And that stroke changed him. It's like, no, that's how he always was. But then he had a stroke and he had to do debates freaking right after he went through his stroke. I will say this, as a person who likes Fetterman, I'm generally on his side. And I do like the fact that he keeps it pretty casual, but he takes it to an extreme, right? I mean, he looks like he's going to open gym. He's got N1 long ass basketball shorts and a hooded sweatshirt. So for me, like, don't wear a tie. But I think John Fetterman, and I like the guy, you could even wear nice jeans. You could wear some of these nice pants guys have. You could wear khaki pants. I mean, hell, people are wearing Jordans now as dress shoes. He could wear pants, some nice Jordans, and it could be a quarter zip. Like, you don't have to wear a tie. I do think John Fetterman takes the outfit too extreme, looking like a bum. And I like him, but you can clean it up a little bit, especially for the inauguration. You can wear pants.
He's on brand. I think the trend of fashion is so interesting. I mean, everybody used to wear suits all the time. I mean, you go back and look at old clips, videos from like pictures from the 20s or 30s. Men wore suits like every day, just out to go to the grocery store. Now we wear athleisure. Nobody dresses up for anything. And I don't sit around and be, oh my God, where is your suit to go to the store? Would it be weird if Obama was up there in like a wife beater and a pair of shorts? Okay. Yeah, maybe that would be weird, but would I be outraged by it? I'm just talking about me personally. Would I care? No. Do I lose any sleep or muster up any outrage that Fetterman had the audacity to wear shorts to the inauguration? No, I just can't. Or that women dress more provocatively than some people. I thought we were past that. I guess not. More provocatively than some people would like to certain events. How about people just wear what they want to wear, and if you don't like it, don't say anything. Or if you do say something, fine, but just don't get super outraged about it, because there are other more important things going on in America than what people decide to wear to certain events.
All right, let's end on this. It's a topic, and I'm looking at it right now, and it's my Christmas tree. My Christmas tree is still up, and this became a little bit of a battle with my wife. I love Christmas. I love the decorations. So what we had going was I took down basically all the decorations in the house except for the Christmas tree. And I was thinking, look, my daughter's birthday is January 19th, right? And then Ohio State has this playoff run. And I kind of like watching the games we have a fireplace over here. I kind of like the ambiance of the fireplace and the Christmas tree. So I tried to sell this to my wife and I said, what if we did this? I said, what if after Christmas, we take down the Christmas decorations from the tree and we make it a Janie Mae's birthday tree, right? Like, because her birthday is January 19th. We keep it up 2-3 weeks later, but we make it a birthday tree. And she was not about that whatsoever. She didn't like that idea. I thought it was a creative idea.
So, but you is the tree still up?
So just yesterday, she started taking the decorations down. I basically just have to take the tree out of the stand and throw it out. Our leaf waste comes on Fridays. So today's Wednesday. So I'll take it out by Friday. But the tree is still up, but all the decorations are off it and it's ready to be taken out of the house.
Yeah, one year I had we have always had artificial trees. So it's different if it's alive versus artificial. But we kept ours up just because we were busy and didn't care until I want to say it was almost March one year. And every night I would still turn it on. Every night, yes. Every single night I would still turn it on because I just liked the way it looked. And now there is something to be said about only bringing it out for that time of year, making it kind of a special occasion. But on the other hand, there's just something cool about having the lights of the Christmas tree.
Yes.
And look, if you have to go through the process of every year, bringing it out, getting all the ornaments out, maybe you have some tinsel, maybe you have a little setup underneath, maybe you just let it ride all year. I mean, would that be the worst thing in the world if you just let the tree up all year through to save yourself the hassle of digging it out after Thanksgiving? I've never tried it, but I don't know. Is it crazy?
The lights do look cool, by the way. And that's the same thing. At night, especially, when you walk through your house and it's dark and you see the lights, it looks cool. By the way, in St. Louis, I have John Rybolt here. See, he's bringing up the Ryan Day thing. No, Ryan Day should not be fired.
John. Oh, they're on you for Ryan Day.
Did I ever say that? No, you probably saw this in St. Louis. There are people that they do their Christmas lights outside their house, but then they either leave them up or they turn them into Mardi Gras lights. And so they're purple. They're whatever the Mardi Gras colors is, it purple and green and yellow, whatever it is. Right. So like you'll see that. You'll drive through St. Louis. I just did this the other day. I was surprised at how many lights I saw, but it's Mardi Gras lights. And I guess when's Mardi Gras? Another month or so. So they're going to be up for a while.
Yeah. My son, he has autism. He watches his little tablet. He loves Christmas music. So he will listen to Christmas music all year round. Little jingle bells in like May or June, just keep the Christmas. Everybody loves the Christmas time, right? Everyone is feeling good, is happy. So keeping it going all year round.
That's what I'm saying. Extend it as long as possible. Have that tree up for a good solid 2 months. Put it up. I'm cool with putting up the decorations the day after actually Halloween. I think it's cool to have.
Wow.
Seriously. Well, the Christmas mood, even though it's Thanksgiving, I think you should have your decorations up for as long as possible because it puts people in a good mood.
Yeah, no, I agree. I used to not like it early, and I do think there has been a lot of Christmas creep, but at a certain point, the weather gets a little colder. As long as it's not overboard, as long as you're not blasting Christmas music everywhere, that early in the year, that's a little bit weird. But I do like the idea of extending the happiness. I think you're on to something here, Charlie. If it puts you know what? Tell your wife that you're the man of the house.
Yes.
And you want that tree up, and it's going to stay up, damn it.
Yep.
You need to put your foot down, and you're just going to keep it up 12 months.
I'm going to try that tonight. I'll report back next week, and we'll tell you how it goes.
Yes.
There we go. On that note, we're almost at an hour there. Perfect. Everybody settle down. The sports edition. That's Eric Messersmith. I'm Charlie Marlow. Please comment, like, subscribe. And this is also on the Kenny Wallace Media podcast. So please rate and subscribe and give us that 5-star review. And it's all good. All right. I'm going to read John Rybolt just so we get to an hour here. He says, Charlie votes for his wife too. In the elections, you're saying? I don't do that. I don't do that. And John says, what is this? Your 12th YouTube channel, Charlie? This is the football channel. We're building it up. All right. It's all good, John. But thank you for your comments. Eric, we'll see you, buddy. Take it easy.